Next, we'd like to welcome to the stage Nils of Train Tracks, and he's going to be interviewed by Andy Mok, the founder of Red Pagoda Resources. So come on up and take the stage.
Thank you, Rebecca. So as Rebecca mentioned, I'm Andy Mok, founder of Red Pagoda Resources. We also run Beijing Tech High, the weekend startup accelerator. And we recently signed a partnership with Fesco, the foreign employee services company, to launch an accelerator in Shanghai. And I've known Nils for a number of years now, and really excited to hear his newest thing and share what he's doing with you. So Nils, what is Train Tracks, and why is what you're doing matter?
Thank you, Andy. It's good seeing you again. Andy and I both attend every event there is to attend in Beijing, so I see Andy a lot. Train Tracks is an analytics platform that we built for the Internet of Things era, like really big data sets, because we found that there was a very big need at the enterprise level for how to deal with managing evolving and disparate data sets. So there are a ton of products on the market that help small, medium businesses monitor user behavior. But when you're an enterprise, you're a publisher, you have 80 different games online, and you start trying to figure out usage behavior patterns over several products, you run into some really intense big data problems. So we built what we believe to be the absolutely fastest backend for analytics in the world, with built-in version control systems for data models and a graphical operating system to run on top of the data infrastructure.
Great. So I know that technologically that it's pretty difficult to build something like that. What about from a user experience? Do you have an example of a client or a project you worked on that you can share with us?
So since we work with larger companies, most of the companies we work with are very strict NDAs, but we are working with a local company here in Beijing. I'm sure some people in the audience use it, Tantan, the dating app. So what we help companies do is make it very easy to ask questions about behavior. So if you work at Tantan and you want to ask a question like, what percentage of gay users got a match today on iOS? That's a question that an intern could ask with a point-and-click interface instead of having that be an engineering issue.
Great. So, we know that the startup space is very hot, not just in Silicon Valley, but in China, and valuations are skyrocketing. How does that look in your space? How do investors view your sector of the world?
I think big data is the most underserved and problematic buzzword out there right now. I think there are only a handful of investors that even understand what big data means, and even top-tier VCs in Silicon Valley are still quite confused about what big data means. And there's this joke that big data is any data set that's big enough to crash Excel. And I think that was certainly true when the term first came around. But data has grown so quickly now that there are companies that send billions of events every day, millions every second, and terabytes a day. And for these kinds of data amounts, it's completely do-it-yourself. Every company out there that sends more than, say, half a terabyte a day has built a system in-house. And on the other hand, there are a ton of very prominent first-tier VCs that will tell you that the big data space has already been won. We spoke to one prominent VC in Silicon Valley that I'm happy to just name and shame. We spoke to Andreessen Horowitz that had recently made an investment in Mixpanel, which is a product for small, medium businesses. And at Mixpanel's latest round, they reported that their entire client base combined records 34 billion events every day. Or, to put that in scale, 1% of the data that one of the world's largest game publishers produces in a day. So almost none of the data is being captured. And I think our industry is very poorly served by big data becoming a buzzword before anyone really knew what that should be.
That's really surprising, because you think that, particularly like you're saying, top-tier Silicon Valley VCs would really get big data. That being said, have there been any useful insights or advice that you've received from investors you've interacted with?
I think we have gotten a lot of useful advice from investors who have been around for a while. I think a lot of the investors that were active in the previous boom, they work with B2B technologies. They understand that it's quite different. I mean, we've had VCs ask us things like, when are you going to have 1 million users? Which is not a meaningful question in a B2B setting. But a lot of the investors that were around for the previous boom, that invested in a lot of technologies, that work for businesses, they really understand it and have helped us understand much better how we need to go approach going to market, which is very different when you don't have a consumer product. But also how to approach roadmaps and client behaviors. I think, there's an influx of new money, right, in the capital industry, and I think a lot of the new money is very interested in the data field. But almost none of the investors of the new money understand the field at all.
Okay. So it sounds like the more valuable kind of input you're getting is more conceptual from investors. Okay. So switching gears a little bit, so you decided to launch your startup in China. How's that being in China either helped or hindered what you're doing?
It has absolutely helped us 100%. I don't think we could have built train tracks in Silicon Valley. So the good thing about taking VC money is you get to grow your business faster. The bad thing with taking VC money is as soon as you take on any VC money, you adopt their business model, right? Part of your business is going to have to be making your share more valuable. And there are certain things that just come with that. And in Silicon Valley especially, we see things that you're expected to release an MVP in 6 months. And the reason why no one has captured any percentage at all of the big data space is you can't build something better than an in-house system in 6 months. It takes more time. For us to get to a minimum viable product, just something that can catch fire, that took us 2 years. And if we had wanted to do that in Silicon Valley as first-time entrepreneurs, imagine the amount of money you have to raise to do 2 years of R&D before you have an MVP. I think Beijing is unique in its ability to attract really smart money with people with a long-term vision that understand that certain problems aren't solved in 6 months.
So it sounds like, somewhat ironically, that investors here are more patient, more understanding, and perhaps going to give more.
The data sets are larger here too. I mean, a lot of people think that big data would be a Silicon Valley thing, but it really isn't. The data sets here are a lot bigger than the ones in the States. There's just less experience to go around. There are fewer in-house systems that have been built here, but the systems that have been built, they handle enormous data loads.
I guess that makes sense because everything in China is multiples bigger than in most other countries.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about so that's on the positive side. What about on the negative side? Are there drawbacks to doing this in China?
I think for our industry, the drawback has been that China was behind on, this is a mixed blessing. So the prevalent paradigm for big data analytics is based on Hadoop and MapReduce. And Hadoop and MapReduce never really had time to catch on in China. China was just too late on the ball. When I first arrived here as a consultant, we were doing big data consulting for some of the biggest tech companies at the time, the CNES and the like. And one of the dirty secrets of the industry back in like 2011 was that the VATS companies actually shared Hadoop talent. There wasn't enough talent to go around. And because of this, there are fewer in-house legacy systems that you have to compete with. There are fewer sunk costs. But there's also a naive optimism here because there are companies haven't been burned yet. They think that they can do it on their own because they've never tried. So it's been difficult in the sense that most companies here feel like, of course we'll build our own system. We can do that for like 100,000 RMB, right? Whereas the average cost of an in-house system to maintain for most of our clients is approaching $10 million a year, even if you're using free technology. So there's this naive optimism that we can do this here, hold my beer. But on the flip side of that, something that's been very positive is the technology that we use. We're one of the first 3 teams to touch a technology called Spark. China adopted Spark very, very quickly because there were no sunk costs in Hadoop. There was no one betting on Hadoop being a paradigm that was going to be around in China. So China is a great place to hire Spark engineers. So it's been a mixed blessing.
So it sounds like that hiring top-tier technical talent hasn't been as much of a constraint for you guys as it might be for some other startups or big companies.
I think if you are looking for talented big data engineers and you're looking into Spark, China is a great place to recruit. A very sizable percentage of the engineers that we meet in Silicon Valley now working on other Spark projects actually came out of Beijing.
Great. And I guess the last question is, looking ahead, what do you see for the future of the space? And in particular, what are thoughts and concerns around big data, privacy, cybersecurity?
So cybersecurity and privacy is very interesting when it comes to analytics, because one of the main reasons why big companies have not adopted existing analytics tools is they've been almost completely software as a service, which is just not compliant with the privacy requirements that a lot of these bigger companies have. So I think a lot of companies are going to move off the cloud and start hosting analytics on their own machines.
Great. And so it sounds like you were saying earlier that there's many investors that might not have a good sense of big data analytics, and perhaps there's a lot of enterprise people in the audience as well, so either your potential customers or potential investors. What should we be paying attention to as the space evolves?
I think we need to understand that the data warehouse era of data management is over. Now when we're moving into the Internet of Things era, even including things like mobile gaming, the data sets are so much bigger than anything we've ever been used to. I think in the last few years, more data was generated than through all of the 90s, right? And there's going to be a shift in paradigms. Existing solutions from the 90s just will not scale to the kind of data we're generating. And to any investor in the audience, I'll say any dollar spent on Hadoop in 2015 is a dollar lost.
Can I just end with one quick comment? If we look at IPv4 with about 4.3 billion internet addresses, and the transition to IPv6 with something like 340 unidecillion, which is 340 trillion addresses, that the explosion in data and the Internet of Things, I think you're in a very, very promising space, and looking forward to seeing train tracks further develop.
Thank you, Andy. It's been nice talking to you.
Great, thank you. Big data into bigger data. Thank you, Andy and Nils.